This video is going to show you how to complete page 122 out of your math book. And it has to do with real world area problems. So the question says, they want us to find the area of each shape based on the provided measurements and explain how you found each area. So we're just going to do that verbally. And just writing down the formula kind of also explains what we did. So we don't have to get too technical on that. I went through and I labeled what each of the figures represent, these two-dimensional figures. We got triangle, parallelogram, hexagon, and a semicircle. Semicircle is half of a full circle. And I want to remind you, area, it's basically asking you how many square units fit inside that 2D figure. So when we're trying to find the area of a triangle, we got to figure out, well, how many, little square units fit inside there. That's what area is. That's why you always label area units squared or square units, okay? Because it comes from there, okay? Right here, same thing. When you find the area, you're finding out how many squares fit inside that two-dimensional figure. How many squares fit inside this hexagon? This two-dimensional figure. It's a flat figure. How many little squares fit inside that? Okay, how many square units? All right, so we'll start with the triangle. To figure out the area of a triangle, you should know that you just go 1/2 base times height. Okay, or you could say 1/2 length times width, but that's going to give you the area of a triangle. Okay, so I'm going to start off with 1/2, and if you want, you can turn 1/2 into 0.5. It's the same exact thing. Okay, and then the base is 10 units. And I'm putting parentheses to signify, hey, we got to multiply. And our height is 7.5. Okay, and that's going to give us the area of a triangle. So when I go ahead and multiply this out, what I can do is I can go 10 times 7 and 5/10, take that answer and then divide it by 2. Or I can go 10 times 7 and 5/10 and multiply it by 1/2. Because multiplying by 1/2 and dividing by 2, that's the exact same thing, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and do this right here and go 10 times 7.5 and divide it by 2. Okay, and we get 37 and 5/10 units squared. And the reason I'm using the word units is because it doesn't say centimeters or inches or anything like that. Okay, or I could have also said 37.5 square units. Same exact thing. Okay, now let's move on to the parallelogram. And the area of the parallelogram, we can go length times width. Okay, so the length times the width. Should go 12 times 9, okay? And 12 times 9, that gives us 108, and it's square units. Okay, and you're probably like, well, why'd she write units squared over here? It means the same thing. They're interchangeable, okay? Now let's go ahead and tackle this hexagon right here. And I have never ever given you the formula to find the area of a hexagon. But I have given you the tools to figure out what to do when you're confronted with this kind of problem. Look at the information they do give you. Well, what shape is this right here? Hey, it's a triangle. And how many triangles form this hexagon? Kind of like you want to slice it like a pizza. Okay, there's 2 triangles. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. Okay? And we're going to assume that they're all going to be congruent, okay? So let's go ahead and find the area of this triangle right here, and then from there I want you to kind of think about what would you do to get the whole entire area of this hexagon. Okay, so for this area of this triangle, area of any triangle, it's 1/2 times the base times the height. Okay, or you can go base times height divided by 2, because dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. So 1/2, or you could do 0.5, times the length of the base, which is 6 units, times the height of that triangle is 5 2/10. Okay, so that's just for one triangle right there. So I'm going to go ahead and figure this out. So let's see, half of 6 is 3, And then 3 times 5 and 2/10 is 15 and 6/10. And that's units squared. But don't stop there, okay? Because this area, there's 15 and 6/10 little old boxes that fit in there for these units. And that's the same for this guy right here. Okay? And I'm sorry I'm not labeling them because I just want to save myself some room because it's already kind of a tight squeeze. Okay, so I can add all those little areas up of each one of these triangles, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. Add them all together, or I can just multiply this by the 6 triangles that compose this hexagon. So multiply by 6 triangles inside hexagon. And by the way, a hexagon has 6 sides. And when I multiply 15 and 6/10 times 6, I end up with 93 and 6/10 units squared. So that right there is the area of that hexagon. Now the next problem, we need to find the area of the semicircle. And since a semicircle is half of a full circle, I'm going to think, gosh, what I do know is I know the area of a full circle. The area of a full circle is pi times radius squared. Pi times radius squared, okay? Or you can do pi times radius times radius. But since it's a semicircle, which is half of a full circle, we gotta take this full circle and divide it by 2. That's a step that many people seem to forget to do. Half circle, 1/2 pi radius squared. Now, you can go 1/2 or 0.5 times pi times the radius, or you can go pi times radius divided by 2. These are the same thing right here. 1/2 pi r squared or pi r squared divided by 2. Same, okay? And you can just, make a preference. You probably have a preference and you can use either one of them. So let's go ahead and plug in the information here. So the distance from here to here is 9 units. But we don't need the 9 because that right there, that's the diameter. From here all the way across from our diameter. So halfway is the radius. And half of 9, when I go 9 divided by 2, I get 4 5/10. Okay? So that's the number that I'm going to use because that's the radius. So I'm going to go ahead right here, and I'm going to go pi, write that there, times the radius squared. Well, the radius is 4 5/10. And I can't do 4 5/10 times 4 5/10 right now, so I'm just going to write that in right there. Then we take that answer and then divide by 2. Okay? And that's going to give me the area of a half circle. So anyway, let's go ahead and plug that in. I'm going to use my calculator to go 4 5/10 times 4 5/10. Instead of going 4 5/10 times 4 5/10 to get this, there's a faster way on a calculator that I'm going to go ahead and show you. So you can go 4 5/10, and then if you see this right here, see how it says x squared? That means you take this number, plug it in for x, and then square it. So it's 4 5/10 times 4 5/10. Press the button, and there we go. We get the same exact answer. So this little relationship right here, when I take 4 5/10 squared, we get 20 and 25 hundredths. Got to multiply it by pi. I'm going to put pi over here, then divide it by 2. Okay? So I can take that, I can divide it by 2, I end up with this, and then I got to multiply it by pi. So times, I'm going to use my pi button on my calculator. If you use 3.14, you'll probably get a slightly different answer. Okay, so I typed into pi, and then I press equals, and I got this. 31, and I'm going to round nearest hundredth, 81 hundredths, okay? And I'm going to get approximately 31 and 81 hundredths units squared. So you see I divided first and then multiplied by pi. You can also multiply first and then divide by 2, okay? So same answer, times pi. See, on my calculator, when I press pi, it pops up, and then I have to press equals. Some of your calculators may not be just like that. They might be a little bit different. So I get this, then I'm going to divide it by 2. and see how we get the exact same answer, okay?